Has the Department of Housing spoken on this either during, during our committee process and understanding, did they support this process and know that they're going to be a part of this? Do they have any testimony, either support or against this? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
I don't recall whether the Department of Housing testified on this. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Scott.
Yeah, you'd think if this was so important for fair share, that the Department of Housing be involved,
Can you?
testify, support this. But I agree with the proponent. I don't recall that either, and I sat with him through many public hearings, many hours, and I don't recall that either. So the Department of Housing is not asking for this, pushing for this, or testifying in support of this. Is interesting. So the process starts with the OPM secretary, as I'm told, to start working on the metrics. We're giving a lot of responsibility for something that one individual has, and I think it's interesting that while the guidance is here, they have the entire, I wouldn't even say the guidance is here, I would say 50,000-foot guidance is here, that we have, that they don't really have the true understanding of what they're trying to accomplish. The Department of Housing hasn't commented on this, hasn't done anything. So I do worry about the autonomy that we're giving the Secretary of OPM as we work through this process here. So I do want to talk about that process. So we want to talk about the timing and where they're going to go through and get to a spot of what that fair share number is for each individual town. So through you, Mr. Speaker, what is the beginning process after the metrics are set? So we have the metrics. They decide that this Secretary of OPM who has this authority, who has this power to come up with the metrics on their own, after they set those metrics, what is the next step that will happen in this process according to this legislation through you, Mr. Speaker?
Not later than December 1st of 2024, the Secretary, in consultation with the Commissioners of Housing, Economic, and Community Development, shall, using the methodology established, determine the minimum need for affordable housing units for each planning region.
So since it's informational, the proponent just said, there's nothing that's going to be acted upon, no plan in their mind or expected to be acted upon those numbers. It's just informational. We're not planning to do anything else. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Luxembourg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's correct. This is a aspirational goal setting.
That's a very good point. Why do we need that then? I think that's a very good point. Yes. If it's aspirational and there's no action to it, then why do we need it? Because there will be something done with those numbers. That's the clear answer. Because I worry about what's going to happen on December 1st, 2024, when we'll be, hopefully many of us will be sworn back in, a month later. So what's the next step after that? And that's what I think we are opening the door for, is to understand what the next step is. We don't know what it is, but we know there will be a next step. The number is not just an aspirational goal. We'll put it away, stick it in a drawer, and finish it off. There will be something next, and that's what we need to be worried about, because we know we've had many conversations on this floor, off this floor, in terms of talking about what is the next steps. That's not currently in this bill anymore because it was taken out, but we know what the next steps are tended to be. And this is the first step for it. So everyone needs to understand there will be a number assigned to your town, your district, your municipality, and that number will be acted upon. That is going to be very clear. Not part of this legislation, I understand, but this is the first step towards that. So as my initial annoyance came out that we're putting an amendment, which is LCO 9715, on a bill that has no germaneness necessarily to that underlying bill, I do want to kind of recap what is in this bill as we just went through it for the last couple hours. Number one, the biggest piece of this, which has been the most talked about in this chamber and outside this chamber, is about fair share. Fair share is the impetus and the baby form of what fair share will be. And we all know what fair share is because we've talked about it pretty in depth, trying to find what fair share is and what fair is. This is the impetus. This is the nucleus of what it's going to start at. We are going to find out in roughly 18 months what each of our towns or our municipalities, our cities are going to have a responsibility for as we go into the next cycle, next session year. We're going to find out what that number is going to be and what that responsibility is going to be. Because again, that's not just a number that's going to be out there. It is a number that will be acted upon. So it's a worry to me that we're having this step here about fair share. So I think we need to clarify that and make everyone know that when fair share is happening here is this beginning part of this needs assessment. We already know what the results are going to be. We see them from the Open Community Alliance. We see that, what it is. If you go to their website, you can find out what their rough estimates are going to be. We're going to find that out, and they're going to be very close. And then we're going to be back here and have to at some point vote and understand on if that is going to be the numbers that we're going to assign to each of our towns for that need throughout the entire state of Connecticut. So it's a worry. Secondly, what's in this bill is we're also talking about a lot of relationships between tenant and housing provider. We need to understand that has been whittled away. We have a lot of different situations that we're talking about whether or not those housing providers are going to be put at a significant issue. They're going to be standing back and not be able to provide that housing potentially because some of the rules that are going to be in here, the laws that are going to be in here are going to be hurtful to them. And that's something we're trying to avoid. We're trying to avoid not having less affordable housing, less housing in general. We're trying to understand what can we do to make more. And if we're taking housing providers out of the market because they don't want to deal with the additional rules and additional issues that they're going to have to deal with, that's going to cause a problem and they might want to do. Think about a house that somebody has, a house that they're just renting in any random town or city or municipality in the state. If they're tired of these restrictions and things hanging over them, they could just sell the house to somebody who's going to live there and now they don't have it to rent. That's one less unit out there for people to rent. It's a worry that this bill starts going down that path to that. It's a worry that we have. So I went through the bill very closely. I know there's a lot of people in the chamber, and I do appreciate you guys sticking through this because I think it was very valuable so you can understand what's in it. But I ask you to take a look at that and understand what's in there so you guys understand that what fair share can do and what potentially some of these rules against these housing providers could do that could ultimately actually hurt the number of housing units in the state of Connecticut. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the time to speak.